Hi, my name is Mark Walker. I'm the editorial director at the FinTech Times, and we're here at Abu Dhabi Finance Week on day two. I'm going to start off by asking my next interviewee to introduce himself to you, the audience.
Yeah, hi, my name is Anthony Soohoo. I'm the chairman and CEO of MoneyGram, and we are leading a massive digital transformation as we embrace digital assets, especially stablecoin.
Well, that's great to know because my favorite subject at the moment is stablecoins. Way back in June, I was on another stage with a panel talking about stablecoins, the dream versus the reality. And it's kind of interesting, and I would like to get your take on how far do you think we've come from, only 6 months or a year ago when the whole trend was about central bank digital currencies, but now stablecoins. How did that come about?
I think that there's two ways to kind of think about it. In some respects, you can look at it and say, what took us so long? And then when you look at more recently, you might want to say, if you take a longer vantage point to it, to say, man, a lot has happened. And what I would say when people ask me about it, and I was just actually at a recent lunch at CEO lunch today, where we talked about this topic. And on one side, it was proponents, believers, and on the other side were non-believers, which mainly were on the real estate side. What I would say is that digital currency, specifically stablecoin, is a killer app. And just like the PC with when the spreadsheet Unleash a PC era is a killer app, or when you think about the internet browser launched the whole internet that had been around for 20 years prior to that, I do think stablecoin is a thing that's going to unlock a lot of different use cases. And I can go into reasons why I'm so excited about it. But I do think when you look at it, it feels a little like right now, internet 1994. We're getting to the middle of the year. Some people have really started using Mozilla, but no one really knows what the business models are. And people are saying, boy, how do you ever make money in that?
I think, yeah, like you said, it's a really interesting time. I think that's, kind of why we're seeing an awful lot of different stable coins. Obviously, up until now, everything has been US dollar pegged. We're starting to see a few other variants into the market. How do you think that's playing out with regards to sort of the explosion or the use case for specific stable coins? Or are we going to have hundreds of thousands?
I think that the world's going to expand before people kind of choose to get into a few selected ones. And there's going to be different ones for different use cases. And what I would say is that there's going to be some stablecoins that are better for large transactions, especially around the concept of programmable money for real estate transactions as an example, because you want things as you think about you're a builder. What you want as a builder is to make sure that the buyer is actually going to be made whole and is good for delivering on what they say the price that they're going to pay. So, as a buyer, you probably typically do not want to release all the funds until projects hit certain milestones. Well, in the new world of stablecoin, especially with smart contracts, it enables that. So I think that there's going to be a type of stablecoin that does that. There's also going to be other ones that I think consumers are going to want, which are really low cost, low transaction value, to allow consumers in high inflationary areas to be able to store value in a currency that they want. Right now, it seems like the currency du jour is US dollars. In the future, I'm sure, based on diversification, there's going to be other currencies that they're going to want to test. But across all of them, I think it's an exciting time right now as this stuff kind of sorts itself out.
Yeah. And I guess thinking about it from your point of view as MoneyGram, where do you see yourself in that sort of play? Because obviously, as a sort of a network or a transferer of value, are you going to have to deal with the idea of, 20 different stable coins that you're going to move around, or 40, or what's your sort of viewpoint on how you deal with that?
Yeah, so I think it's a very exciting time for us. What I would say about it is it's kind of like the way I kind of call about it is that our company is going through a refounding. Similar to what Satya Nadella did when he took over Microsoft, where the company used to be a desktop software company and really embraced cloud and AI. I think MoneyGram, just to give you a sense, that's been a company that's been around for about 80 years. The company operates in actually over 200 countries and territories across 20,000 corridors. And the most magical thing about it is that we actually have close to 500,000 retail locations around the world. To give you a sense of that scale, that's more than McDonald's, Subway, and Starbucks combined in terms of physical retail locations. You kind of combine that with our 5 billion digital endpoints that we can access across the board. It becomes a very powerful network. And the way to think about us is that we're one of the world's largest global payments network. And then the question is, what do you do with it? Well, some of the use cases are for families or people to send money back home, because sending money back is a form of love and support. The other part is people send money cross borders a lot to pay tuition or pay their rent. And I think that there's going to be all those use cases. We're excited to solve and support all those at MoneyGram, because what we want to do is allow people to send money around the world and save them time, effort, and money. And one of the things we try to do, even though it's a very complex transaction, is we try to hide that complexity from the consumer. And so while the world, consumers don't actually need to know that they're getting in this, they have to know anything about stablecoin. All they need to know is, I want my currency until I'm ready to spend in my local fiat to be pegged to the US dollar, and then we can solve the rest of the problem for them. And I think then for us, it's a magical thing, because we do take all the complexities out for the consumer, and hopefully it'll drive a lot of different more use cases as we look forward.
I think that's kind of interesting, right back in the original sort of creation of the Bitcoin conversation, that there was this utopian dream that moving money around was going to be completely free of cost and completely free of friction. And I think that's probably unlikely to be the case going forward, even with stablecoins, isn't it? There's still going to be an element of needing to simplify things for an average consumer.
There is, and I think that the way I kind of think about it is, our inspiration for stablecoin or crypto, any of the technology we offer, is to be like Apple. Like, the more Apple touches a system, the more you think it's just part of the Apple ecosystem, but you don't really need to know in the old days how PCM CIA card worked, or you don't need to know how Wi-Fi works. It just kind of works. And I think it's going to be the same way. You want to send money to the other side. Now, some of the complexities that when you talk about costs that won't come out, there always will be FX risk, for instance, when you're trading between the two. But where digital currency actually allows us to do is probably get the cost of sending around the world to be as low as possible. And we allow that consumer on that side who receives it until they're ready to spend in their fiat currency. In the past, they had no choice. They just have to take it out in a fiat currency. They can hold it in US dollars, denominated assets, and only convert it when they're ready to spend. What that does for them is it protects them against a very volatile economy they might live in. And it's also going to be a cheaper form of risk for them to hold as a result. So I think there's a lot of different use cases. You can imagine a family saving just enough to pay for tuition or rent. And when they send back home, the last thing they want is, if the currency gets to value, they don't have enough to pay next month's rent. And this does away with a lot of that. Solves a lot of problems.
Absolutely. And I guess sort of thinking about we can't really go too far in the conversation without talking about AI and this sort of autonomous AI agent and agentic AI. Thinking about sending money home, can you envisage a world where that is done autonomously with agents on both sides? And what role would MoneyGram play in that sort of future?
I think that besides just sending money, I think the idea of agentic AI or agents that you talk about is going to be open up a new day. I think everyone's actually going to have their own financial advisors or their own person that manages their money in an ethical, safe environment. And I think that what they'll do is they rely on it. They won't actually think anything else outside of the fact I'm getting the best and most comprehensive advice. So besides, let's just say, sending money, they can figure out where I can earn the best yield, where I can get the best deal on an auto loan, to when I get paid, should I actually be buying crypto or should I own Ether or anything like that. I think that it's going to open up a new type of financial advice that the world's never seen. And I think the most interesting thing when you think about this versus other technology revolutions, typically there's like one major transformation. What we see right now is convergence of both AI and digital assets all converging together. And I would say this is a thing that's like 30 years, 50 years in the making, depending whose timeline you're looking at. But it's very exciting that it's starting to land in the feet of consumers. And I think a lot of businesses are going to benefit a lot as well.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a really interesting time, and it's kind of almost difficult to predict, isn't it, what the future is going to be like. But if you were sort of a betting man, what sort of thing do you think we'll be discussing this time next year? Will it be the same, or will we be at a different point?
I think we'll be much more advanced. I think one of the first things is that there will be much more use cases. So, as an example, we just launched our digital wallet in receiver-side wallet in 7 countries in Latin America. I think that we're going to have a lot more adoption of that. We're going to have real use cases to prove out things that operate at scale. The other thing, I think we're going to look back at this era and feel like this was like the baby digital asset era. Because just like there was a baby internet, and as people evolved, they got the full internet. I think it's going to feel like that as well. So I think that when we look at it a year from now, what's going to happen is that things are going to be faster. They're much more real time. I think they're going to be cheaper, and they're going to be higher quality. And then the only question we have is, how do you scale trust? And for us at MoneyGram, we've operated for over 80 years, and that's a benefit of our brand. I think that consumers have known us for a while. We're just moving into the digital area, and we want to make sure we get there and serve our customers the best way possible.
I think that's a really interesting concept. Trust in the process and trust in companies is going to be, in my opinion, one of the key things that we're going to be talking about next year, because there's going to be lots of opportunities to save a lot of money and to save a lot of things, but are you going to trust any of them?
Yeah. I mean, people talk about scaling infrastructure. I think we now need to scale trust. And when you can scale trust, it goes back to the thing I brought up earlier. You're not just going to use MoneyGram to hopefully send and receive money, but there's going to be other use cases where you're going to find us useful too.
Fantastic. Final question for you before I let you go. Abu Dhabi Finance Week. Been here for a couple of days now. What's your feedback or thoughts of the event?
It is a magical time to be here. Actually, first, coming from Dallas, I can tell you that last night I was able to walk around in a short sleeve t-shirt. So it's a lot different than back home. So first, the weather's amazing. The second thing I think I found here is just a sense of enthusiasm and optimism for the future. Even though typically I think in these crowds it's a little bit more conservative, but I think that there's a sense of the future is going to be brighter. They just don't know what it is yet. And I think it's exciting to kind of live within this and join in the conversation and learn together. And it's been just an amazing time being here, kind of talking and engaging with other folks that might have different viewpoints than me, but I'm certainly soaking it all in every conversation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for spending time with me at the FinTech Times.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it.